Hello, everybody. What's up? A special emergency edition of the Due Distance podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular.
Hello. And we appreciate you choosing to come to our live stream because I know Crystal and Kyle fucking in a parking lot covering this is a lot more enticing. They're live streaming that right now. They were right in the middle when the news broke.
Yeah, oh shit, gotta
They're
stop.
streaming it now.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you being with us. We appreciate you choosing us over that.
Yes.
Triple X version.
Yeah, right, exactly. But we do want to break some news here, obviously. Big news. Democrat Catherine Cortez-Masto wins re-election to the United States Senate in Nevada. NBC projects CNN has joined them. What this means, of course, is that the Democrats will hold the Senate regardless of what happens in the Georgia runoff. So to answer Jill's question, no, they do not need Raphael Warnock to hold the Senate at this point. They are now at 51.
So stop texting us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They're at 51. And so there you have it. The Democrats have held the Senate. It's just extraordinary that in a year of such degradation and decline and suffering that not a single incumbent senator was voted out of office. Not one. Not one. The Democrats gained a seat because Fetterman won, but Fetterman did not knock off an incumbent. Pat Toomey was retiring, so not a single incumbent senator lost their seat in a year like this. It's just really extraordinary.
Well, it's interesting. You know, your article, I don't think you actually used the term, and I don't think you mean to coddle the right wing. I don't think you mean to coddle them. But some of the take I've seen from some of the more interesting people on the right has been that the culture is so black-pilled. That black-pilled is their term for people who've just given up, when you've just completely abandoned all hope and just gone over to total nihilism. So their take is kind of the country's been so black-pilled that they just don't see any hope. Like, why would they change? Why would they vote out the incumbents? If they don't think anyone's going to make it better, why would they?
I mean, this is the article that I wrote. I won't read it here. I might make a video essay out of it this week if I have time.
You should.
But yeah, look, I mean, I think that is part of it. I also think, and part of what I wrote in the article is that the system has found a way to weed out everyone who would vote for change, right? Now, I didn't go as far back in my article as I could have. I kind of kept it to like the Trump and post-Trump eras. But if you take it back even further than that, this sort of populism that took hold in the country really took hold post-2008 when the housing market crashed.
Right.
And that sort of populist fervor split into two camps. You had the Tea Party on the right. You had Occupy Wall Street on the left. The Occupy movement sort of, I don't want to say morphed into the Bernie campaign, but sort of was the electoral byproduct. The Sanders campaign was sort of an electoral byproduct of Occupy. And you could argue that the Trump movement was an electoral byproduct of the Tea Party. The Trump movement obviously broke through, and the Sanders movement couldn't get past the primary round. But once that populism broke through, the system responded in all sorts of ways to shut it down. And that's kind of what I wrote about, right? Whether it's the two Sanders campaigns or even the George Floyd protests, right? Even all the hysteria about, oh, no, we can't defund the police. We have to increase police. Like, the reaction to these populist uprisings was just so severe and so coordinated that a lot of people who were involved in them just had a door slammed in their face and figured, well, what the hell? Right. And so the only people left to participate in this process are people who think more or less, we have to kind of stay on the road we're on, whether they like it or not. It's not that the people who voted on Tuesday approve of the direction of the country. Exit polls showed overwhelmingly they do not.
Right. They just didn't see an option.
It's not that the normies support the status quo. It's that the normies feel completely disempowered to change anything. And everybody who felt empowered to change something, they're not voting anymore. And so that was sort of the thesis of the article. And that seems to be what happened, obviously, on Tuesday. The other thing that happened on Tuesday was the Republicans ate shit because they deserve to eat shit. I mean, they ran terrible candidates. They had no message. Their explanation for the cause of inflation made no sense. The idea that it was big spending that caused inflation made no sense. It makes no sense to the average person, because just like the average person understands there is inflation every time they go to the supermarket, the average person also knows that the stimulus checks came out between a year and 2 years ago, depending on what checks you're actually talking about. They also know when they go to the supermarket that not only are things expensive, but shelves are empty, which means it's obvious this is a supply-induced inflation, not a demand-induced inflation. They might not know how to exactly to articulate it in sort of textbook economic terms, but they understand. Prices go up when demand exceeds supply. And it's not that we're experiencing outrageous demand, it's that we're experiencing supply chain issues. That's why the shelves are empty. And so that is what's driving inflation. The Republicans never had an explanation for it that made sense. They never put forward a plan to fix it that made any sense. Slashing Social Security, slashing Medicare, never made any sense to people. And so that's a big reason why this happened. The third reason, if I may just
go ahead.
Complete this here. The right-wing media.
It's like your ring cycle.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You're only up to the flight of the Valkyries now.
Right, exactly. Well, this is the third one and final one. The conservative media did to the Republican base in 2022 what the liberal media did to the Democratic base in 2016. Oh, this is going to be a wave. There's no way we can lose. We got this locked up. And they didn't have it locked up, because the polling never showed that they had it locked up. And a lot of the polling that came out in the last 2 weeks that showed they were closing the gap, that was obviously junk polling. It was junk polling. Right, in New Hampshire, they had Bolduc coming back, erasing a 9-point lead to tie Maggie Hassan up in New Hampshire, and he lost by 10 points on Election Day. So those are just shit polls. Right. And so there was a narrative being manufactured by conservative media that just misled the entire country into thinking that this was going to be a red wave. And so there you have it.
Well, I mean, my theory is partly that a lot of Republicans voted for abortion rights and they weren't going to answer pollsters that way, that they were going to vote Democrat. I think that's part of it. This is a theory I'd like to explore as well. Maybe I'll write an article about this. We have often looked at, especially people who were on the Bernie side, we would look at why African Americans would listen to people like James Clyburn and why they would vote for people like Hillary Clinton, who ran a demonstrably, incontrovertibly racist campaign against Barack Obama, the first black president. And the answer that would often come back would be, black people can't take those kinds of chances. They can't. It's too dangerous for them to risk having crazy Republicans in power. They're just not going to take a chance on a guy like Bernie Sanders. I think in a sense, maybe the whole country has been put in that position. The whole country is afraid now. The whole country is afraid to take chances. Does anybody really think that the Republican solution was going to be anything other than to cut entitlements? Like people are so hanging by a thread. I feel like the entire country has been put in the frame of mind that was often the explanation given for why minority voters or people of color would often vote for these horrible establishment Democrats, with the belief that, well, they can win, they have the establishment support, and we just can't take a chance on some crazy Jew from Brooklyn. We just can't. We can't. Our communities are uniquely at risk from a loss. We just can't risk the loss. And I think the whole country maybe has been transformed in that direction. It's keeping with what you're saying in your article, it's the Cool Hand Luke thing. They got their minds right. The public got their minds right. They got rabbit in their blood. They tried to run. Now they ain't running no more.
Right.
Now they're going to stay on the pea farm. Right? They're not. That's it. We tried. We tried with Bernie. You could also say we tried with Trump, and, they're just not going to allow that. So, okay, please just don't take away my Social Security and my Medicare. Please just leave me that. Please leave me that much. That's it. I think that's a big part of the explanation too. And that's what the right wingers mean when they say black pilled, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong. I disagree with them in terms of their solutions. Like they have the notion that these Republicans taking over would have been better for the country. I don't believe that. But they're right that the fact that the Republicans didn't take over is not a demonstration, clearly from the exit polling. It's not a demonstration of faith in current leadership. It's a demonstration of terror at the alternatives and a feeling of the impossibility of doing anything better than this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is well said. And I think that does play a big part here. But I also think that, part of the reason, and this is not to contradict anything you said, it's just to add on, like the reason they feel that way, like you said, is because they just feel like better things aren't possible, better options aren't on the table, right? And so they're just in this sort of defensive, like crouch position. That's what I wrote in the article, right? Where like they just got to hang on to what's theirs and play out the end game as sort of quietly and as peacefully as they can. And I think, turning over the keys to the car to, Dr. Oz, Herschel Walker, Ron Baldock, and it's too much for them. That would require some fight. It would require some fight, some sort of energy, some vision of what a different world looks like. And like I said, I'm not endorsing that world. I'm not saying that's energy put to good use. I'm just saying that requires a certain fighting spirit that I just don't think is anywhere in the population now, not on the left or the right. And it's going to be very interesting to see on Tuesday what the reaction is to Trump's speech, how that goes over. What the crowd is like, because these midterms were obviously a disaster for him. And it's going to be really interesting because for the first time...
Not according to him.
Yeah, well, yeah. He blamed it
this
partly on his
great.
wife.
I endorsed 2,398 people and only 16 of them lost.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah. By the way, I'm going to put our patron skull in the bottom of our screen. Thank you so much to our patrons for helping us keep this show going. We appreciate you guys very much. But it'll be interesting because for the first time since we've been doing this show here, the Republicans are going to have a real battle for the direction of their party, and we'll get to cover that. We haven't really gotten to cover that much because Trump has led the party. Period. Like, there has not been a threat to that leadership in the time we've been doing this show. But now there is. And so now we will get to look under that hood a bit. But yeah, this creates huge, huge questions for them. Look, Democrats, it was always, fairly likely they would hold the Senate, although 538 had it at the time of the vote more likely that the Senate would flip than not. But Democrats held every seat they have to hold. Not a single incumbent was knocked off.
Yep.
And that is just a statement on how the Republicans botched this. And they botched this by assuming that outrage alone was going to cause people to default to them. Okay, if people are dissatisfied with inflation and Joe Biden is presiding over inflation, they just assumed that would be enough for people to vote against them. No matter what they were getting on the other side.
Historically, it usually would have been.
Yes, historically it would have been. But, like you were saying, these times are so severe. I think people feel so desperate that, empowering a party whose pitch whose solution to the problem that they are pitching you is to gut social services,
Right.
is to
Right.
make your life
Right.
harder.
Right.
With the,
Right.
you know what I mean?
These are not frivolous times. These are not the 80s where you can put things like that out and people don't have a cold chill go through their gut and imagine themselves pushing a shopping cart.
Right.
But these are times when you start putting forward those fucking discredited Reaganomics propositions in this world. In this world, you're gonna do that. Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. The Republican Party needs to retool in ways that it is going to be very difficult for them to retool, because it's going to mean throwing out two legs of the stool on which they've built the modern Republican Party. They're going to have to piss off the Christian right by reaching a compromise on abortion. And the best they're going to do is, yeah, they can argue, look, most European countries, it's 15 weeks. And so we're going to conform to that. That's the best they can do with that. And they have to finally kill the ghost of Reagan. They have to get rid of Reaganomics. They have to become much more committed to an activist government, providing economic help to the working class that has become their new base. Now,
right, that's the thing. That's the thing. Once you import a voting block, you then have to serve that voting block.
That's what happened with the Democrats.
Right.
That's how the Democrats and the Republicans switched. They took each other's voting block. So it's happened again. Now the Republicans, they're going to have to change their whole economic philosophy. They're going to have to turn towards an economic populism that suits the base that they have. And they're going to have to compromise on the abortion issue, which is going to piss off their Christian fanatics. They're basically going to have to do what the Democrats usually do with their base. What are you going to do? Vote for the other party?
Right, exactly. Lloyd has a question for you, Russell. I don't know why it's directed just to you and not to both of us. What, I'm not here? Should I leave?
Well, that's why they call me the brains of the operation.
Exactly. Russell, what do you think of the Republican ticket of Tulsi Hawley 2024 or something like that?
Well, I mean, you're modifying it with something like that. Hawley is never living down his Benny Hill moment at the Capitol there. Just running past the doorway. He's never living that down, man. He's never living that down. I think Tulsi would be a formidable candidate. I've said that before. If she figures out what the fuck she wants to stand for. She is kind of all over the place. She's solid on some things, but then her candidate endorsements are very confusing, because she is clearly favoring Republicans. She's not going and backing Democrats who have a anti-war stance. Not that there are a lot of them, but I'm sure there are some of them out there running for the House that we just don't know about because there are so many House races. So the fact that she only endorses Republicans, yeah, I mean, a lot of it does seem very calculated. So it's hard to know exactly what she really believes in on certain issues and how much is a political calculation. But all that having been said, she's a powerful speaker. She's quick on her feet, and she has a very interesting pedigree. And if anyone could effectively represent MAGA communism, it's Tulsi. If she chooses to synthesize, Tulsi could articulate the vision of the Republican Party that I'm expressing right now, because she's kind of pretty much right there. She has a history of the economic populism with Sanders, but she has a certain cultural conservatism, but not to the extreme of being anti-choice. So yeah, I mean, Tulsi at the top of the ticket, she'd be formidable. I don't think she can take out DeSantis. If you want to talk about a really, really formidable ticket, DeSantis and Tulsi, that is, for the Republicans, that's a really strong ticket.
Yes, that would be.
If I were running the party,
that just pisses liberals off. He's not talking about the fist pump. He's talking about the footage of Hawley running through the hallways of the Capitol once
he's never getting past that.
Deplorables breach the gates. Right. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about the fist pump.
He'll never live that down. That's Dukakis in the tank with the helmet, man.
He also won't live down. He won't live down the fist bump either. I mean, the media will just never let him live that down. They'll savage him, and he doesn't have the chops that Trump has to overcome that, really. Right. And so, yeah, I don't think he's much of a threat. Look, I mean, the fact that there is going to be a Republican primary now leaves an opening for other candidates to come in and see what they can do, right? Obviously, DeSantis and Trump are the two favorites. I would put DeSantis' odds a little ahead of Trump as of right now, just because, I mean, we have polling that indicates that, which we're going to get to in tomorrow's show. We are live at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. But they are going to be the two favorites. It's going to be very difficult for a dark horse to come in and overtake them, but it's not impossible. The very fact that the process is now open, you have an open primary. We know for sure right now there will be a contested Republican primary, and that itself creates an opportunity for people to get in and see if they can make an impact. You know, people like new candidates. People like it when somebody emerges who they never heard of, and who's this? You know, every once in a while, you know, candidates like that catch on, and so there's no reason to say that that's impossible. It is going to be difficult, but they do have to adjust. They have to abandon, like Russell said, their strict pro-life attitudes and their sort of, you know, libertarian Reaganomic attitudes. They're going to have to adjust that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think the Republicans are going to have an easier time adjusting their sort of ideological framework than the Democrats do, because I think enough Republicans are just sort of from the business world that, like, the Republican Party isn't as precious to Republican politicians as the Democratic Party is to Democratic politicians, because if the Republican Party goes away, these are business-oriented guys to begin with. You know, they're surrounded by people who really embody that world, whereas the Democrats are this weird sort of social club that has to front as a sort of left-wing group while at the same time being indebted to corporate power. They kind of need the Democratic Party because the environment they thrive in can only exist inside a sham of a political party, right? There is no institution outside the Democratic Party that is anything really like it. Whereas, you know, whatever.
Being in the Republican Party,
GOP goes belly up.
Working for Gulf Oil.
Right, just go work for ExxonMobil. Exactly. That was exactly the example I was going to use. They get their ass kicked, they go sit on an oil company board, right? There's a support system.
Well, with the Democrats, they go work for Amazon. They go they can go work for Amazon. They can go work for Facebook, Twitter until recently.
That's true. That's not to say there are no backup plans for
they go to those Silicon Valley gigs. You know, they go to media.
But even those organizations are political in nature, and so you need a Democratic Party that's viable in order for
you need a Democratic Party to support those organizations.
Right. In order for those organizations to really mean anything. Right. And so, for that reason, I think, you know, perhaps the GOP might be a little bit more flexible. They're also more serious about winning, right, than the Democrats are. Right. They want to win. You know, there's two kinds of wisdom that sort of political leaders employ. You know, this goes back to ancient Greece. They say there's moral wisdom, which is doing the right thing because it's right, and then there's prudential wisdom, which is doing the right thing because it helps you stay secure in where you're at. Right? That's where, like, throwing the peasants crumbs, not because you want to feed them, but because if you don't feed them, they'll overthrow you. That would be prudential wisdom. And so it's possible that the Republican Party gains a little bit of that. They're going to have to.
Right. I mean, that is the Democratic Party. Democratic Party is purely prudential wisdom. That's it.
Right.
That's it. That's all they've been for a very long time. The Republicans basically have none of that.
Yeah, no.
They've skated on culture issues for 40 years, more or less. They've skated on the fact that the Democrats threw their base overboard and are culturally repugnant to most of the country. And because the economic circumstances have grown so dire, their luck ran out in this midterm. And now they're actually going to have to come up with a meaningful economic program.
Exactly. Hey, Lloyd, how was that lesson in ancient Greek democratic philosophy? How was that? Did I prove I'm smart enough? Maybe you'll ask me a question next time, or no? Still only interested in Russell's opinion. Was that good enough for you? What was this question? I don't even know. Trump still controls the Republican base, but he lost the independents and drives up Democratic turnout. Well,
I don't think he does.
Republican base is up in the air now.
I don't buy that.
It's up in the air now. There's polling that indicates it's up in the air now. Like I said, we're not going to step on tomorrow's segment right now. So tune in, everybody, tomorrow, 7 p.m. But it is true. You are correct that Republicans ate shit with independents, which really hurt them. Hurt them.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, the fact that these races were as close as they were, despite the fact that Republicans ate shit with independents, shows that they were able to get decent base turnout. Because if you lose independents by 10, 15, 20 points, as they did on average, obviously very slightly state to state, then you're going to lose by a lot more than some of these margins they lost by. So, their base is engaged. The Democrats' base was obviously engaged this time because of Roe. Who does it come down to? It comes down to the normies. Now. And the Republicans just alienated too many normies with their hysterical bullshit and their Reaganomics. This is not the time for that. I mean, one of the good signs coming out of this midterm is that the fear-mongering on crime did not work, and the Republican argument for why inflation exists and what to do about it fell flat. Those are encouraging signs for the left. And I'm not talking about for the Democrats. I'm talking about for the left. Because the Democrats cannot turn to the progressive wing of the party at this point and say, you guys cost us anything, because they didn't. The crime message was not enough. Even the stuff that we've talked about a lot with the trans stuff and the sex ed in schools and critical race theory, even that didn't kill him. It didn't kill him. And the rejection of right-wing economics as a solution to inflation is crucial. It's crucial. And it was in that. And what's especially encouraging about that is that the voters had to sort of think of that on their own, because the coward fucking Democrats didn't make that argument. Nobody made that argument, right? Bernie was the only one who occasionally would say on TV, the Republicans are blaming this on spending, which is wrong. So he said it a few times, all right? Credit where credit's due. The Democrats were not out there making that argument because, and this is where you want to talk about, hidden motives. I think the Democrats were expecting a red wave, and they were looking forward to blaming the red wave on progressive economic policy so that they'd never have to cancel another dime of student debt ever again. They'd never have to expand any unemployment benefits ever again, because they could say, look, we tried this. We wish we could. They'll do that whole thing. But look how we got our asses kicked. So sorry, never again. And it didn't turn out that way. And it didn't turn out that way because the voters were smart enough to know that, no, austerity is not the answer here. Austerity will not dig us out of this. It'll only make it worse.
Well, yeah. I mean, I also think something that I would take away from this election is the electorate isn't as fucking crazy as the media is telling you they are. Trump was a unique phenomenon.
The normies hold a lot of cards. That's why I wrote this. Everybody go read that.
It was a very good article. Trump was a brick through the window. He was not an articulation of the views of the American public, other than that they hate the establishment and wanted to burn it down. But to interpret that as meaning that all these crazy stop the steal, nutty, no abortion for people who have been raped, that's the country you live in. No, that's the country cable news wants to tell you live in so that you keep watching cable news. But it's not based on this result. Those candidates all went down in flames in red places. So if this is what the country is, if the country is half MAGA, Why did these people go down? The country is not half MAGA. The country is a lot more complicated than that. And even people you disagree with, even people on the right, aren't necessarily complete fucking lunatics. But and this goes on both sides. I mean, the Fox News is gonna find all 6 drag time story hour events in the country and show them as if this is happening at your local coffee shop. And it's really happening nowhere. It's happening in a couple of towns in California. And on the other side, they're going to show you the craziest election denying MAGA person they can find to reflect. Yep, this is what Republicans are. They just want us at each other's throats for profit, really. But this result, I think, should make some people step back and say, hey, maybe we should go back to when we could have a conversation with people we politically disagree with, because maybe some of those people aren't as fucking crazy as I've been led to believe. Those crazy people exist. Are they a majority? No, any more than it's a majority that would take their child to a drag show. That's not a majority of people. That's not a majority of people on the left. The MAGA people are not a majority of people on the right.
Yeah, I mean, look, that is true, but I also don't want to lose sight of something. And, Wolfsten makes a point here. The normies are dumb. They are the wave of ignorance. Listen, I somewhat agree with that. And that's kind of what my article was about. So I put the link to the article in the chat here. I encourage you all to read it. I will probably make a video essay out of it this week, since it is doing pretty well, which makes me sense that there's an appetite for it. But yeah, look, I mean, I think, the normies are the people who have been driven to despair by a combination of state and corporate power, which is fascism. I write that in the article. Right. So they have been
fascism relies
brought to
on
heel
a feeling of
by
hopelessness.
fascist power. Right. They have been brought to heel by state and corporate power. They've been brought to heel by consumerism, capitalism. Right. I mentioned there's a George Carlin quote where he did a riff on the old Sinclair Lewis quote, which isn't really a Sinclair Lewis quote, where he says, when fascism comes to this country, it will be carrying a flag and a cross. And what Carlin said on Bill Maher was great. He said, when fascism comes to this country, it'll be in Nike shoes and smiley T-shirts. And that's really what has happened, is that you have had post-Cold War, you've had capital unleashed, and that has ushered in a post-democratic era. And the way it's done that is by just numbing people, by giving them gadgets and toys, depriving them of the imagination or the intellectual fortitude to imagine anything but what they have.
The philosophical depth.
Right. Exactly. It's gone. And then when things turn bad and people get desperate, they turn to what they have. And what they have are their things, their stuff. Right. And they can't afford to have their stuff fucked with. And so they can't ante up more money in taxes so that we expand the pool and, create a sort of society. Right, that has things like universal health care, right? Free tuition, things like that. All that imagination has been stripped, and even when that and we saw, frankly, signs that it was coming back post 2008. That's what I'm talking about. Once the financial crisis hit, that was okay. People realized since the end of the Cold War, since this end of history period began, where now that's it. We understand democracy. Capitalism, that's the way. Since that time, and 16 years after that, or whatever it was, my math is wrong on that. They basically had 2 bubbles and 2 crashes. They had the .com bubble of the 90s that crashed, and then the housing bubble of the 2000 bubble, the housing bubble of the 2000s, which crashed. And people thought, okay, maybe this isn't the end of history after all. Maybe now we have to start thinking of other systems, and that populism manifested itself in 2 different ways. Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street. And the system responded to both those movements by delegitimizing the ideas that were associated with them over the next 10 years. And that's where we are now. And the people voting now are the people who have been brought to heel by those forces. So I'm not endorsing the normies.
And everybody else,
that's how we got here, and that's where we're at. That's where we're at. They're the ones who hold the cards now, whether you like it or not. I don't like it. If I liked it, you think we'd be doing this show?
Yeah. We'd be doing Pod Save America. We'd
Right,
be getting some of that Hillary Pack Grant money, motherfucker.
Right, exactly.
I had a guy telling me I was cultivating a persona, implying I'm doing it for my show. I was like, dude, if I were gonna cultivate a persona, this is not where the money is. The persona I'd cultivate would be totally I'd be all establishment Democrat,
center left, right? Exactly.
Oh, Fetterman, that was so inspiring. The way he stood up for what he believed in on that stage. I don't think that debate was a train wreck. It was courageous. I have an aunt who had a stroke. That's what I'd be saying if I were grifting. That's the grift. Pod Save America. That's where the fucking money is, bro. You know how much money these shit libs will give you to be a fucking propagandist for the establishment?
And that's the thing. The shit libs have deep pockets. They donate.
They have money. Not like you motherfuckers. We haven't got one super chat on this stream.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Grifting for what?
Look, do I feel safe in the subways, Mansa? Yes, I do, because you guys don't give me any fucking money. Who's going to mug me? My pockets are empty because of you.
He's got no cash on him.
I got no cash. I feel perfectly safe.
Somebody comes up to Russell, tries to bust him. You say, listen, man, I would if I could. Sorry.
They don't super chat me, man. What can I tell you?
John's Emily Vlog says we never recovered from the 2008 crisis. I believe that's 100% true. Sorry, Russell, you were going to put something up?
Yeah, just a little love. Not going to get money. We'll take some love.
Oh,
thank you for the reference. Love your show. Thank you, Wolfstan. Thank you for that. We appreciate that.
Hey, Lloyd stepped up.
Lloyd stepped up.
You guys should have a bigger audience. Well, we need you to spread the word, everybody. We got a pretty good crowd in here. We planned this stream 10 minutes ago. I texted Russell. I said, listen, we should go on.
For a Saturday.
I told Russell we should go on.
Now, look,
Russell was in the middle of his nightly jelking routine, and so he didn't want to.
I was about to meditate. I was like, fucking, we're gonna go up there and start talking about politics, man. I was getting all mellow. But
all right, well, we're gonna be back tomorrow, so maybe we should mellow out now because we don't want to step on tomorrow's show. We've been on for almost 40 minutes. It was supposed to be 20, but you guys kept us around, so thank you guys very much. I'm gonna put the Patreon scroll up one more time. Patreon.com.
Lloyd, as a great man once said,
support the show.
It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. And it's not as easy to build on YouTube as it used to be, because for one thing, they step on political shows. They don't really want to push political shows, I think, particularly very left shows like ours. And also now you got 8 million people in the game.
Right, exactly.
But we're pretty happy with the growth, because we started out doing the podcast and the articles. We've really only started trying to build the YouTube channel for about a year.
Yeah, it's really only been a year. We started as a podcast and a blog, basically. And it was an audio podcast. We did long form stuff that we put out an hour at a time. There were no clips. There was no short form promo content. And to be honest with everybody, one of the reasons I wanted to do that was because podcasting is the last sort of uncancelable platform there is. You can say anything you want on a podcast, right? I mean, there's no way anybody can cancel it, because worst comes to worst, one podcast server doesn't want you anymore, which never happens, right? You never hear of any podcast get thrown. Worst comes to worst, you take your RSS feed, you go somewhere else. Boom, you have it. You know what I mean? And so that was one of the rationales I had for not getting into the YouTube stuff, because we are more constricted. Look, we call this independent media, but look, they put ads on YouTube. Those ads are paid for by corporations.
There are stories we choose not to cover.
Right. There's stuff
the way we cover certain things, we stay off certain angles. That's why you never really see us doing much about the cough or all that stuff.
Exactly. Right. Well, maybe when we
Jill, you're gonna get me mugged now.
$5. Thank you, Jill. Appreciate it. But anyway, we've been satisfied with the growth of the show, and thank you guys for helping us out with that. And obviously, we put the patron scroll up. We shout out to the patrons now every show. If you can go to patreon.com/DueDissidents, that really helps us out, because that not only gives us the funds we need to keep the software up and running and all this stuff, and fix a mic or microphone cable if it breaks, right? But it also keeps us consistently in the game so that whatever happens with any of these tech platforms that we're on, if they decide to screw us, at least we have a base of support. We can keep the show going for an albeit smaller audience, but it insulates us, right? And so that's important. And even if you don't have any money to cough up, you can sign up for our Substack by going to dothissidence.substack.com. And this way you get everything. You get the audio podcast, the written articles, and the videos emailed to you. So we can all stay in touch that way, no matter what. Beltos, you guys are the best. Thank you for the content. Thank you, Beltos. You're the best. Well, you're second best. The best of this stream would be Jill, because that was $5. So you're second. So you're the second best. Thank you so much, though. We appreciate it. Second best is, nothing to shake a stick at.
we come cheap. We're like a couple of Tijuana hookers.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everybody.
We're the Tijuana hookers of podcasting.
Yeah,
not like that Kyle and Crystal show you guys could have caught.
Yeah, no, right, exactly.
That was the best senatorial coverage from that parking lot tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Breaking news. All right, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. So make sure you're there with us. Thank you for being here with us now for this breaking segment, and be safe, be well. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Mañana.
Please clap.